الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وتالله لأكيدن أصنامكم بعد أن تولوا مدبرين. Please recite as-salawat. Respected listeners, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Out of all the prophets mentioned in the Holy Quran, one prophet is known to be explicitly idol breaker, idol thrasher, or in Farsi and Urdu language, but shikan. The one who broke the idols. And we all know that it is Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. Although the Holy Prophet and the Amir al-Mu'mineen, they also cleansed the Kaaba and removed the idols from there. But in the Quran, there is one episode from the life of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam that explicitly tells us that he went proactively into the temple of his people and thrashed the idols. And this raises several questions because we as Muslims are supposed to follow Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there is a good example, uswa hasanah, in Ibrahim and those who were with him. For us, there is uswa hasanah. So someone might say, since Ibrahim was an idol thrasher, idol breaker, maybe we also should go and do something similar. Can we do that? And this question is quite often asked, and there is quite some scholarship in the Islamic literature trying to answer this question. And there are different points of view which I am going to tell you in this lecture, those different points of view. And in the end, I will sum up all those different points of view and give my point of view and my understanding. What is the answer to this question? Because we live in 21st century and there is freedom of religion and everyone is free to worship what they want to worship. And you cannot simply go and insult other people's faith and religion. And not only that, practically you damage their places of worship. This is what we, as we understand it, that we are not supposed to do it. But still, the question is, how could Ibrahim alayhi salam do this, but we cannot do it? So this is what is going to be the focus of this lecture today, which is the third lecture of this series of lectures, this tafsir, thematic tafsir series titled Our Father Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in the first two lectures, I told you about some of the episodes from his early years when he was a young man living in Babylon with his people and surrounded by those people who worshipped stars, the moon, the sun, and also different idols, including the man named Azar, who was his uncle, Ibrahim alayhi salam's uncle. He was also an idolater, and according to some narrations, he in fact carved out idols and sold idols. So he was very much into idolatry. Therefore, he said to Ibrahim alayhi salam, if you do not stop criticizing our gods, لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ, if you do not stop criticizing our gods, لَأَرْجُمَنَّكَ, I shall stone you to death. He was so furious. So what did Ibrahim alayhi salam do in response to all that? He told his people, don't worship those idols. It's not good. Worship one God. And they said, no, we are going to continue to do that. So then he said something to them. And he said, the verse I recited in the opening sermon, وَتَاللَّهِ لَأَكِيدَنَّ أَصْنَامَكُمْ بَعْدَ أَن تُوَلُّوا مُدْبِرِينَ. He said to them, by God, by Allah, I am going to do something to your idols, something bad to your idols when you have gone somewhere, when you are absent, when you are not there. So he pretty openly said that. And then the Quran tells us that when there was nobody around, and according to some narrations, people had gone outside of the city to take part in some festival, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he remained back and he went to that place, that temple where they kept their idols, and he فَجَعَلَهُمْ جُذَاذًا, and he turned them into pieces. He broke them into pieces. إِلَّا كَبِيرًا لَهُمْ لَعَلَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ يَرْجِعُونَ. Except the one idol that was the biggest of them all. He did not touch that idol, left it so that the people of his nation, they would return to it and see that it is still intact while the other idols have been thrashed and broken. So this is what happened. And then they came back and then they saw, our idols. Who has done this with our gods? The one who has done this, he's a zalim person, unjust person. Among the zalimeen, they said that. So, قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. They say, we have heard, سَمِعْنَا فَتًى, we have heard a young man, فَتًى, who does dhikr of our idols, who talks about our idols, يَذْكُرُهُمْ, who talks about our idols in bad words. He is called Ibrahim. It must be his work. So they called him. Have you done this, Ibrahim? Now Ibrahim alayhi salam said something very interesting. He said, بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ إِنْ كَانُوا يَنْطِقُونَ. Ibrahim alayhi salam said to them, no, بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا. No, but the biggest of them all, this one that is still intact, has done this. فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ, ask those broken idols, إِنْ كَانُوا يَنْطِقُونَ, if they could speak. Ask them. Then they realized, according to the Quran, they said, we have been zalim. We have been unjust. We have no answer. Very simple logic to make this point. Now I'll get back to the story, what happened. So the question, the main question still, he went there and he thrashed those idols just like that. And his people had no answer. They said, okay, we have been unjust. We have been doing something wrong. Still, they did not like it that he had thrashed their idols. Now, what is the answer we find in the Islamic scholarship? Different scholars, different historians, different ulama have given their opinions. Like why Ibrahim alayhi salam could do this and why we cannot do this. Now there is one point of view among the Muslims, and that is the Talibani point of view. They say definitely we too should do it. And they did it. They blew up the statues of Buddha and they destroyed this heritage, those old statues of Buddha, and it was widely condemned across the world what they did, because Taliban thought that they could do this. They have this right to go and thrash anyone's idols and anyone's places of worship. So that is one point of view in the broad Muslim ummah or among the different schools of thought, yeah, some people believe that, yeah, we can do this, rather we should do this. Similar point of view Daesh had, for example. Okay, but that is the extremist point of view. Now, there is another point of view, second point of view, is that, yes, we have to respect the freedom of religion and other people's religions. And Allah tells us not to insult others' false gods. Otherwise, they will insult your God. And in Islam, there is freedom of religion. In Islam, there is minority rights. Despite that, this point of view says that still you do not have to respect all ideologies. And they give the arguments like, for example, in some religions, in some customs, like in the Jahiliyyah times, they used to bury their daughters alive. And they said, this is our custom. And you will say, oh, okay, we respect your custom. No, you cannot simply respect their custom. In India, for a very long time, until the British came, and even after the British, there was a very bad custom that a widow would have to be burnt alive while her dead husband was being cremated. So the woman would be burnt alive. So you would say, oh, yeah, we respect other people's religions and customs, so we are not going to oppose this terrible barbaric tradition which is a part of their religion, their religious practices. No, you can't say that. You have to stand up to those barbaric practices, even if it is someone's religion. Like Vikings in the land of the Rus in the Middle Ages, Dark Ages, which is part of Russia and Kazan. Ibn Fadlan was a Muslim prominent figure who was sent by the Caliph at that time to propagate Islam. He went to Kazan and he observed the most barbaric Viking practices that I cannot even tell you from the pulpit, which included the things like when a chieftain was going to be buried, one of his slave girls would be picked who would actually volunteer herself. She would have to be ceremoniously raped and then killed in a barbaric way. And it's all part of their faith, their religion. And Ibn Fadlan couldn't do anything. He was alone there. But the point is, such things have existed. And you can't say, oh, we are only going to respect your faith because we're not going to do anything, not going to condemn these practices. So these were practices. But what about idolatry and idol worship? Well, the thing is that idol worship is the thing that is hated the most by God. And this is a reality. Despite all the respect we have for all different people of different religions, we cannot simply hide it. The Jews know it, the Christians know it. Our Jewish brothers and sisters are very strict when it comes to idolatry. And you might have seen different videos on social media where the Jews said, we are fine going into a mosque and worshiping there because there is no idol there. But they had problems going to a church because churches do have sometimes some idols. And they said, no, it's a no for us. So it's very open that the people of Abrahamic faiths, in particular Jews and Muslims, they frown upon idolatry and idol worship. And Christians also pretty much do not do idol worship per se, although they do have some idols here and there sometimes in the churches. But still, so Islam is very much against idol worship. But this right to stand up to idolatry, to phase out idolatry, to fight idolatry is not your wazifa. It's not your wazifa. It's not your responsibility. It's not my responsibility. It is the responsibility of those who get direct orders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all. So we cannot say that Ibrahim alayhi salam, what he did was wrong. You can't say that. We simply can't. He did the right thing. But he knew what he was doing was the right thing. Because first of all, he's a prophet. You are not. Taliban are not. We are not. Ibrahim knew what he was doing, first of all. Secondly, another point of view that we hear is that you cannot judge the events taking place in distant past by keeping in view the norms and standards of today. This is also another point of view, but you can argue that this is not really a very strong argument because Allah's sunnah does not change and Allah's values do not change and Prophet's values do not change. But this is also a point of view that we have a freedom of religion nowadays. But in those days, there was no such concept. So yeah, it was okay for him to go and thrash the idols. But I find it to be a quite weak argument. Then I'll get back to he being a prophet. But then another argument that we see in the Islamic literature is that what is described in the verse which I just talked about a few minutes ago, 𝐒𝐚𝐲𝐲𝐞𝐝. Ibrahim alayhi salam broke them, thrashed them, left one biggest idol of them, and then argued on the basis of that and said to them, they do not speak. They do not speak, so tell me, what do you think? I paraphrase. And he made them think and made them realize that they were wrong. After that, Ibrahim alayhi salam did not go to the temple again and thrashing idols and stuff. He was not after thrashing those stones per se. He just did that to make a point. Otherwise, he would have gone again and again, like Taliban tried several times to blow them up, but they did not succeed in doing that. Ibrahim alayhi salam was not after eliminating the statues per se. He was after eradicating the culture of idolatry and the ideology of idolatry. That's one point of view that I tend to be inclined towards. So my point of view is that one thing is, yes, he used this opportunity among his own people, his own tribe, not some other tribe, not some other people, his own people, to make them think, to put forth this argument, number one. He was after removing the culture of idolatry that often has exploitation elements in it. Because there is someone who is controlling the temple, there is someone who is deceiving the people and getting them into idolatry, collecting all those donations and food and things, and using people's ignorance for his own personal benefit. So this is one thing, he wanted to remove that culture of idolatry. And second, my understanding and my point of view is that it's not your wazifa. It's not your responsibility. It's not your task. The tasks of prophets are defined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they know what they have to do, and what they do is the right thing to do. And this is my understanding. This is my point of view. And I'll be very happy to discuss this further with you if you have further questions. But I want to take a closer look at this episode from another angle, from another perspective, and a slightly deeper level. One thing is to thrash the idols carved out of stone and wood. And that is the easy bit. In today's world, we do not have idolatry like that. We don't. The kind of idolatry they had in the times of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and in the times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. We don't have that nowadays, because in those times, idolatry, temple, and all that pretty much governed people's lives. Nowadays, we have constitutions, democracy, and all that. Nowadays, even idol worship has become sort of a personal belief type thing, although still there can be exploitation going on in the name of idolatry, but still, not like that. So what is the deeper and esoteric meaning of this act by Ibrahim alayhi salam? What does idol breaking actually mean on a deeper level? On a deeper level. And this is very relevant for us in the world we live in. And there is a man, a great man, who almost 100 years ago said something profound and deep, a sort of interpretation of the act of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and made it relevant for the time of 20th century, early 20th century. He said that in his works of poetry, and that man is Iqbal Lahori. Iqbal Lahori, who is known as Allama Iqbal in the Indian subcontinent. The Persian people, the Iranian people call him Iqbal Lahori because he was from Lahore. And they read his Persian poetry, which is very beautiful, very profound. But they haven't read his Urdu poetry, which is also very beautiful and very profound. And in some of his couplets, he says, and first I'll recite it in the original language, in Urdu, and then translate it for you into English. And he says, "Ye daur apne barahim ki talash mein hai. Sanam kada hai jahan, la ilaha illallah." And he said, this era is looking for its own Ibrahim, because the whole world is a temple of idols. La ilaha illallah. The whole world is a temple of idols. 1910, 1920 he is talking about. What a thinking, what a deep thinking, what a different perspective. Moving beyond the shell side of things. Oh, idols made of stone and wood and all that. What do they do? What do they say? Nothing. They can't say anything. They can't harm you. They can't hurt you. But there are other sorts of idols that can hurt you, that can hurt us, and they are hurting us, and they've been hurting us for almost centuries now. Centuries now. Iqbal Lahori says the same thing in other words, in another couplet. He says, "Sanam kada hai jahan aur marde haq hai khalil, ye nukta wo hai ke poshida la ilaha mein hai." He says, the whole world is a sanam kada, sanam kade. The whole world is a temple of idols. Sanam kada hai jahan. The whole world is a temple of idols. And marde haq is Khalil Ibrahim. The one, the man of justice, the man of truth. The principles man is Khalil Ibrahim. This is the point, this is the gist of La ilaha illallah that is hidden under the surface of La ilaha illallah. Iqbal says, Iqbal Lahori, Allama Iqbal. What a beautiful thought. What are those idols? What are those idols? The whole world. The whole world. The idol of nation, watan. Iqbal said it in the early 20th century when there was this nationalism on the rise. The nation state, the concept of it, where all Muslims were being disunited into their own ethnicities, their own nations. And the Ottoman Empire was just about to fall or had just fallen. And all these different identities of Muslims were coming to the fore. And a new idol was being carved out. The most successful export of the West is what? Nation state, watan. The most successful export of the West is nation state. And that's why he said, out of all these latest gods, out of all the gods, the latest god is watan. Iqbal Lahori said, one idol. ethnicity, race, these are all our idols. These are our idols. I am Iraqi. Within Iraq, I am not gonna give the hand of my daughter to a gentleman from Nasiriyah because I am from Baghdad, while both of them were born and brought up in Europe. This happens, my Iraqi friends have told me. I am Persian, I am Mashhadi, I am Shirazi, I am Ahwazi, I am Amoli, I am this, I am that. I am Muhajir, I am Pakistani, I am Muhajir, I am Punjabi. These are all idols. These are our idols that we are holding on to. And we want to take distance from the idols carved out of stone and wood. None of us worships that. No one in the world nowadays worships idols with all that sincerity, considering them really like gods and they can do anything to them. It is just a cultural practice nowadays in those areas where idol worship does take place. But our idols, and then there are many other idols that we are holding on to. Wealth, career, position. According to one hadith, in the end of times, the Holy Prophet ﷺ referred to the people of the end of times and said many negative things about them. They would be doing this, they would be doing that. And I'm not getting into the details. And then the Sahaba said to the Holy Prophet, would they be idol worshippers? The Holy Prophet said, no. They wouldn't be idol worshippers. They would be Muslims, apparently, and I paraphrase. They would be Muslims. But each dirham for them would be an idol. The Holy Prophet said that. Each dirham, each pound, each dollar would be for them an idol. These are the idols that we are holding on to. And we are not even aware of those things. And anything and everything that becomes a means in itself, and that becomes a means for us to make ourselves prominent and make others subservient to us, look up to us, that is our idol. That is, we want others to worship us. Whatever the thing we use to make others worship us, that's our idol. And the worst kind of idol is, worst kind of idolatry is the idolatry of the self. The idolatry of the self, and this is what we all do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who has taken his desire, the desire of his nafs, as his ilah? In other words, his nafs is his idol. That's the idolatry of the self. And nowadays, this idolatry of the self is at its peak. And it hasn't peaked yet, but at its peak compared to the past. Human beings have always been self-centered and self-interested and selfish. Let's be very clear. But nowadays, in this age of communications technology and this storm that has taken us all, this storm of social media, where everyone is living in a kingdom of their own and are sitting there as an idol, expecting others to worship them. This world has become so self-centered where everyone is busy in their idols, at the same time saying, La ilaha illallah. So many idols in our lives. Outside us, inside us, our cultural idols, our psychological idols, And let me say, even our religious practices that have turned into idols, even our religious practices, sometimes latmiya, nawha, matam, madah khani, all these things are being done in such a way that they have become idols. Idols. Let me elaborate. The time is pretty much up, but I don't wanna leave anything ambiguous, because nowadays we sit on eggshells. Some people walk on eggshells, but Shia Mullah sits on eggshells on the pulpit, because we say something and it's immediately going to be misconstrued, and you're going to be labeled anti-Azadari, muqassir, la'nat on him immediately. Especially the people of the Indian subcontinent, they do this because they're waiting for it. You say something that can be misconstrued, muqassir, la'nat on him. And I am saying, when marthiyah khani, when latmiyah khani, when nawha recitation becomes a means, not a means, becomes an end, and becomes a means to get others to take you as an idol. When azadari becomes showbiz, when in azadari the celebrity culture comes to such a degree that you cannot even tell the difference between Christian priests of America and Shia Noha Khan and Shia speakers, then azadari has turned into idolatry. For those people, not for the ordinary azadar and mu'min. Not for an ordinary azadar and mu'min. The way things are developing in this world, the way this self-centeredness and superficiality and shallowness is on the rise in this world, our congregations and our faith are also being affected by that. And we have to start thinking about it, because we have stopped thinking. We let business as usual, let it go on, business as usual. And if we do not stop those things, if we do not correct those things, then what will happen? We will change over decades. Over decades, our whole religious practices, our whole azadari would be something entirely different. Shallow, superficial, only having an outward aspect, and hollow from within, God forbid. Inshallah, I'll continue this series day after tomorrow, because tomorrow is Shab-e-Zarbat, the assassination night of the Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali alayhi salam. So tomorrow will be Majlis 𝐒𝐚𝐲𝐲𝐞𝐝, inshallah, with a different topic. And then day after tomorrow, I'll inshallah continue with this tafsir series, inshallah. Until then, take very good care of yourselves, and inshallah see you tomorrow. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa alaikum. Wassalamu alaikum.